Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. Today, I am thrilled to welcome the CEO and founder of Holistic Hemp Solutions, Incorporated, Ann Mejia. Ann, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today with you.
Well, thank you. We have a lot to cover, but I usually start by asking what type of home you grew up in, especially with regard to Judaism.
Absolutely. I was truly blessed. I grew up in a very multicultural community, a suburb of Boston, Randolph, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 80s, it was predominantly a Jewish community. It started to be more multicultural in the 90s. I grew up Jewish conservative temple Bethlehem. It no longer exists anymore. It's really sad. But my background and family network, my dad was Irish Catholic. He suffered, unfortunately, abuse from the church as a child.
Oh, wow.
Never really connected well with, the Catholic faith.
Mm-hmm.
So when he met my mom, he was very interested in Judaism and how, our family functioned and everything, and had a deeper connection with that. So when they got married, he converted.
I was going to say, what prompted someone to convert into Judaism? Because it's, it's always like the toughest religion. So why go into that one?
Exactly. So, I was truly blessed to have a very dynamic family background, from a genetic standpoint. I'm Irish, English, Polish, Russian, 50% Ashkenazi Jewish with my DNA test. But
right.
It's an interesting thing.
How did his family take it when he converted to Judaism, or?
At the time, I believe they were, semi-skeptical, but they really didn't care. At that point, he came from a big Irish Catholic family. They had a lot of trauma in their family.
Uh-huh.
And there was a lot of, different dynamics. My parents actually divorced, and my dad was in and out of my life, unfortunately.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It happens.
Makes us who we are. Right.
Exactly. So, I was heavily involved with the Jewish community growing up. My first job actually was at my synagogue. I worked with a Holocaust survivor. That was my Jewish,
wow.
principal for Hebrew school, Tova Ginsburg. And, it's comical because, I have pay stubs from the 90s where, technically it wasn't legal for me to be working at age 11, but,
Wow.
because of the private sector and the religious sector, you have different legalities with work. So, I was able to work at the Hebrew school, and I helped out in the office and, did some administrative stuff.
How cool at 11 that you got to interact with a Holocaust survivor. I mean, that really must have been like, something to you to hear all those stories.
It's been very meaningful and powerful throughout the course of my life, and just in regards to Judaism,
Right.
How much she survived and all of the trauma. I had family and relatives that, perished, were murdered in the Holocaust, and getting to know someone, that survived it was just, astronomically,
of course,
profound for me. So,
what were some of your interests as a kid?
as a kid, I was very interested in music. I'm still very interested. I loved being outside with nature. My grandfather had 4 girls. And during that era, it was, up and coming for women to, have a place within the Jewish realm and be considered, as an equal. During that time period in the 50s, a lot of women didn't, become bat mitzvahed. My grandfather actually founded a Jewish synagogue, a conservative synagogue in Burlington, Massachusetts. And
oh, that's fantastic. Wow.
Yeah. So he actually taught a lot of women and young women to prepare for their bat mitzvah. So that was really huge.
So you really got that education growing up. You really had that instilled in you.
I did, and I was truly fortunate for that. And I'm grateful for my upbringing and, my connection with the community, which is great.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have such a fascinating background. I was reading all those things. So I just, what did you study when you went to school?
So I have a background. I graduated from Salem State University.
Okay.
I studied psychology and I had a concentration in cognitive neuroscience and research. I was really interested in how the mind worked and,
I can see the progression based on that. Yes.
Yeah, no, and it really was a beautiful thing. I actually minored in criminal justice. I was super interested getting into school. I wanted to do criminal profiling in the psychological realm, but really kind of, steered away from that and got more into the research aspect. And by the time I ended finishing, my 4 years of undergrad, I was burnt out from writing research papers and really wanted to work with people at that point. More so than what I was doing. I did work at a psychiatric group home at the age of 19.
Wow.
My youngest patient was 21. So it's,
That had to be mentally trying. I mean, really, at times.
It's a very depleting industry. It's a dangerous one as well. I'm sure you read more of my story, working in traditional medicine in the psychiatric realm.
Well, yeah, I'm going to ask you about that for sure. But it is, one of my first jobs was like counseling, and now you can't say what it was then, but it was the developmentally disabled, adults, and it was by the same time rewarding, but also mentally exhausting. When you got home, like sometimes you're just like wiped out just from the dealing during the day.
It was very draining. It was a thankless job a lot of times.
Sure.
The healthcare industry, they use and abuse you, unfortunately, in traditional medicine,
Yeah.
So it was a very difficult industry to be in, but I really enjoyed it. I loved working with the families. I loved advocating. I did the clinical assessments, my last job when I got injured.
Well, yeah, I was about to ask about the injury too, but it's amazing to me. You studied criminal justice, so it's like, I know it's not apples and oranges, but it's like, you went from one side of the spectrum to totally the other side. We're looking at it in this. But all right, tell me about the injury first. So tell you were doing something, you had a bad injury. So what is it that happened to you? And I just want to know what your symptoms were afterwards.
So I was working at a nonprofit agency. I was one of the, executive management team. I ran an accredited school and residential program and was giving a tour to a family for a potential client. And the kids get excited. They want to spend time with you. They want to talk with you. One of the patients wanted my immediate attention. And unfortunately, I was like, okay, sweetie, give me 5 minutes. She didn't want to wait. She attacked me in front of these kids' parents.
Oh, my. Wow.
She was like 3 times my size. It took 3 of my staff to get her off me.
Oh, wow.
And I have autoimmune disease. So when I got injured, I injured the whole right side of my body, my neck, my back, my wrist, my ankle. And I never healed properly and developed a rare neurological pain disorder. It's known as reflex sympathetic dystrophy. It's RSD, or complex regional pain syndrome. And it was a really debilitating injury to the point where there were some days I couldn't walk properly.
Oh, my gosh. Oh.
Couldn't move my limbs properly. I was getting color changes to my limbs, and just the pain was nothing like I had ever felt in my entire life. The pain was so debilitating, and traditional pharmaceuticals were not the answer for me.
Well, yeah. So you were prescribed medication, right? You were prescribed like narcotics for the pain.
Everything. So when I, could not tolerate the traditional opiates,
right.
Then they exhausted all the nerve medications.
Well,
so
what did they give you? What did they give you? Do you remember at first?
Yeah. So they put me on, I was on, oh God. I was on Vicodin, Percocet. I think they had put me on fentanyl at one point. I took that for like 1 day and I just really got sick from that.
Yeah.
First of all, it's a really hard to take these medications and be a functional human being.
It's so addicting. Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I had neuropathic pain disorder and it barely touched the neuropathic pain.
Really?
So
Okay.
And when they exhausted the traditional opiates, they put me on all the nerve pain medications. So I was on the Lyrica, the gabapentin. Those made me feel even worse. And then when I exhausted all those, I got sent to the pain clinic where they put me on ketamine. And I had to go to the compounding pharmacy, and I had topical ketamine and oral ketamine. And when those didn't work and I exhausted those as options, they wanted to put me on ketamine infusion treatments. And I just said to myself,
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
Nothing. You saw no progress whatsoever doing all these traditional things.
Not only was it not progress, but like I said, I lost a sense of who I was as a human being. I couldn't think cognitively, especially on the nerve pain medications like the gabapentin. I had trouble thinking of words. I was not a cognitively functioning human being. And like I said, it barely touched the chronic neuropathic pain disorder that I had. So it really wasn't a good, product for me personally.
And so, all right, so this is what I want to know. So how did we go from there being this path that you eventually took? Tell me about, the steps that you went through. Like, what prompted you to seek out cannabis, as kind of like a healing component?
And I appreciate the question because we get a lot of stigma. And I feel like even with some of the Jewish community, I've gotten a lot of stigma for, first of all, owning a holistic health company and working with cannabinoids. People get scared by that. And there's a lot of stigma surrounding that. So, after I got injured, I had exhausted all the traditional routes. I was so sick. I was worse off than when I originally got injured.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry.
I said to myself, there has to be another way. I have to look at some alternative remedies at this point because I can't live like this. So my brother had moved out to Colorado. He was out in Denver in 2015. He moved from New York. He was out in Scarsdale. He relocated him and his family to Denver, Colorado. And I went down there and I tried products that worked really well. My first time ever in a recreational dispensary was with my brother and my mom. And I told the bud tender, I said, listen, what do you have for pain? I am so desperate to get some relief at this point. I'm willing to try anything, and I had always, heard different things in the traditional realm. They demonize the plant, they demonize cannabis. We were taught, from a traditional standpoint that it was not a good thing. So, I was really cautious about trying anything for medical purposes. But when I did.
Had you heard beforehand that this might be worse? This might be something that helps out?
So, yes, not during training though, right? So when you go to traditional school for traditional medicine,
right.
Even from a psychological standpoint, they give you all these warnings of how it induces psychosis and this and that. There was a lot of, fear-based teaching methods when we talked about plant-based medicines and the psychological effects and the effects on the body. So, there's a lot more new research that have come out, which is, compelling, for pain and a plethora of other medical conditions.
Did you, when you first started, so you went out to Denver.
Yep.
And so you're in pain, you go out to Denver, you're visiting your brother. And so you go to the thing. Did you notice like right away, like any heal? I mean, did you notice like some symptoms clearing? Really, that fast?
Immediate. Yeah. For my neuropathic pain, it was almost like within minutes, I started to feel like I could move a little bit better. My limbs felt a little bit less heavy. I could actually have some more movement and functionality to them. But the pain, that was the biggest notice that I, realized right away was the decrease in pain. So when I went back home after visiting my brother, I was living in Massachusetts at the time. I immediately applied for my medical cannabis card in the state. And, with my health issues, I immediately was granted my medical card. So
I was going to ask that too. How easy is it? And what's the process to go through there? Do you have to like go to a doctor and ask for it too? You can't just apply like this. Hey, I'd like a card, right? You have to go see someone. What is the process for that?
Yes. So back in 2015, we only had medical at the time in Massachusetts. So the process for, having safe legal access to cannabis, you would go to a medical cannabis physician, usually like a primary care physician that, did some specialty training within that sector. And then they would evaluate you. There was an extensive evaluation at that time, a medical history. They wanted to know about your qualifying medical conditions. At the time in Massachusetts, there were several, chronic pain disorders, specifically complex regional pain and RSD were on the list. Celiac were on the list. And, so it was a beautiful thing to go and, get that support pretty quickly.
Well, this is all fascinating. I mean, this is all so new to me. So it's like, so were they willing to like give out this card like fairly easily, or did they like start grilling you? Hey, what do you want this for?
I mean, I had expressed everything. They saw the clear medical history of all the stuff that I had already tried. And they were horrified, for my story.
Sure, of course.
But again, from a legality standpoint, they were able to issue it with no issue because of my qualifying medical conditions. The state deemed qualifiable. So
I have family members that also like swear by like taking cannabis for certain things, like anxiety, help sleep, and everything like that too. So it's just fascinating to hear your story with this.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful composition. Our ancestors consumed it for thousands of years to the point where we actually developed a system that works to process these compositions in conjunction, works with the immune system. So again, this disconnect, I do believe, from legality purposes, having this disconnect to these plant-based medicines have contributed to a number of health conditions that society sees normally now.
Well, you also have like the pharmaceutical companies not wanting anyone to use these things because it's a lot of money that's going to be taken away as well.
Exactly. And I do a lot of medical advocacy work, and, I've had a slew of medical trauma. I trusted blindly, completely in the traditional system because I worked in it, but started seeing the red flags, not only during work, but when I became a victim of it, I truly saw it for what it was, and it really opened my eyes.
So, all right, so you were in Massachusetts, and you wrote, part of the things I was reading with you, that there were limited opportunities in New England. So you first moved to Oregon. So what was the difference between the two states with what they were willing to do or offer?
It was like night and day. Oregon has been on the ground floor of, growing and putting out medical cannabis products, for a long time. It was just like, it was almost a culture shock. It was very normalized over in Oregon and the West Coast versus the Northeast. So it was just like night and day. I was so immersed within the culture. I started as a trimmer. I worked my way up. I learned every aspect of the plant. I had lab experience.
That's in Oregon? You started doing all this?
Yes. So I actually went to a conference out in Eugene, Oregon, in April of 2017. And I met some beautiful people out there. And they told me, they're like, hey, Julie, if you move out here, we're going to teach you everything you need to know. I worked with 3 different medical growers in the state of Oregon, and I did some nonprofit work out there, and advocacy work out there, from the legislation standpoint as well. So that was really cool. And then, worked my way up within the space. But yeah, I started at the bottom like everybody else.
So you start working your way through the industry, and then you start coming up with your own formulas. So I was reading. So what does that entail? What do you go through for those trials? There's like, say, hey, I'm going to start mixing this and that. So how does that all work?
So it's kind of a wild story. One of the medical growers I worked with, Steve Hunt, he and I are still close and good friends. He had been in the industry, working with these compositions for over 40 years, testing and doing different things. He was a grower. And he was doing cold processing at the time on actual cannabis. And at the time, my aunt was suffering from cancer. She had triple negative breast cancer. She got diagnosed the same year I got injured at work. So we were both looking for some healing. And, as I continued my studies with cannabinoid therapies, I found that some of the cannabinoids, like I said, THC is one, CBD is another. There are so many others out there. Specifically, the acids like CBDA, for example, it's the precursor for CBD. A lot of people weren't looking into the healing benefits of the acids and the rare minor cannabinoids. So I was really fascinated with this cold processing technology that Steve had developed. And I said, Steve, I have looked everywhere for CBDA. I've been looking for CBGA everywhere. I had even gone to Canada with some friends on a trip looking for rare minor cannabinoids. I could not find a good, reliable supplier. Nobody actually knew. A lot of times, even some of these big extractors out west, they didn't know anything about the rare stuff. So I said, Steve, why aren't people doing this process on hemp? Yeah, so that's really what started me on the recourse, because I couldn't find a good source for these compositions, that I had to start making them myself.
That's incredible.
It's been a wild journey, I'm truly grateful to have gone through all of it.
You found different strains did different things? Different
strains, first of all, contained different things, right? Different cannabinoid and terpene profiles. But yeah, some worked better than others for my condition, and some worked better than others for, this type of cancer that we noticed, or this type of condition that we noticed. So we got a lot of anecdotal evidence from the community, which was great, because, it was a beautiful way for me to contribute and help, and actually just get some knowledge about what we're putting out there. So.
Yeah, so I also read with you, you mentioned that you're both adults and kids using it. It's like pediatric, for medicinal purposes. But what are the benefits, and side effects? Because I read that there are some side effects that can be, and in particular in kids, I'm curious about, but all over as well, because I've read that you can have things like diarrhea, reduced appetite, drowsiness, or things like that. So what are the side effects, and how, I guess, prevalent are side effects?
So honestly, and I try to be as impartial, everything's research-based in my mindset, but seeing the anecdotal evidence really kind of put a halt to some of those claims of, side effects from cannabinoid therapies. I actually saw the opposite. We were giving kids their lives back after taking harsh pharmaceuticals that, now they couldn't go to school anymore. They weren't functional human beings. So we actually saw the opposite in regards to cannabinoid therapies versus traditional pharmaceuticals in regards to pediatric medical care. I'll give you a great example. I work with a lot of kids that have seizure disorders.
Okay.
That didn't do well. They exhausted all the traditional pharmaceuticals. They had, problems with migraines. They were puking. We had a lot of kids that, had developed anxiety that never had issues prior, mood changes, that kind of thing. So, giving these harsh pharmaceuticals that claim to be safe, but that are giving children all these issues and not allowing them to be children, that I see as a bigger issue than anything. I have not seen anything other than a little bit of drowsiness in regards to some of the cannabinoid therapies that we've helped, pediatric patients with.
So it's relatively safe in your opinion? Well, I mean, it's tough because you're selling, but for kids to take as well.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, there's a time and a place for everything. I'm not one of those people that think that all pharmaceuticals are bad or anything like that. And I encourage everyone to talk to, their holistic or their functional medicine physician prior to starting anything.
Right, sure.
Again, taking too much water, you can drown yourself. So, but we're made up of water. So again,
you do that as well. I mean, you would be someone that someone consults for this.
I do consult in this aspect of the industry. I am an industry leader, and like I said, I worked in the traditional side of things, doing the sorry, I can't even think right now. Doing the traditional, appointments with the physicians and stuff like that, advocacy appointments for medical and pharmaceuticals in regards to their care. So
you just said you are an industry leader now, so you've been featured in many interviews. If you look, when I look you up, I've seen many things on you. So that too, you've testified on behalf of cannabis in several states. So when did you realize that you were, like, I guess, first starting to garner attention as an expert in this field? I mean, what's that like when you're first asked to testify before government officials?
It's a beautiful thing because, again, my goal is always to kind of bring knowledge and information and awareness to these compositions. Because, again, at the end of the day, no one gave me a choice. I didn't know about any of this stuff until I really had to dig deep and find it. So I didn't want someone else that maybe just got injured, started down the pathway with the opiates, to not have this information available to them. That's the bigger concern was, it wasn't about getting clout. It was more about getting the message out there that, hey, there are other ways to manage your chronic pain. There are other ways to manage this disorder, because, cannabis and cannabinoid therapies can help with a number of different ailments, medically speaking.
But how long did it take for you hey, I want to speak to Julianne because she's like a leader in the field. So how long did it take for you to first start doing that before you started noticing that, hey, people are coming to me now as an expert in this?
I'd say a couple years. As I became more public and speaking more publicly, and getting more involved in my local community in regards to supporting cannabis. I think, again, if you have the right intentions, you're doing it for the right reasons, it just kind of comes to you naturally. So, I was absolutely excited to teach people and to educate people about these compositions because it had helped me so much, and I really wanted others to be able to benefit from them.
So, you were asked to present at the 2022 Harvest Cup Conference alongside notable industry leaders. Now regarding intellectual property protection. So, can you tell me what the Harvest Cup Conference is and what did you speak about regarding protecting intellectual property? How does that work?
Well, let me tell you before that,
yes.
there was a study that came out from Oregon State a few years back. I had never thought about patenting my products. That study forced me to do it, essentially. They talked about two rare minor cannabinoids that I had in the same composition for my finalized product, CBDA and CBGA, and they talked about these two cannabinoids preventing COVID from attaching to the body. And if you did have COVID, it helped reduce severe symptomology. So that was really the push to filing for patents for my products. I was concerned about Big Brother, Big Pharma getting involved, and making a mess of it, and preventing healers and people that have been working with these compositions for a slew of time, not having safe access to them anymore. So that's really what motivated me to file for intellectual protection of my products. In regards to the Harvest Cup, it is a beautiful industry event. It's the biggest cannabis event conference. There's also a number of vendors, different companies. It's a beautiful blend of community members, but, companies as well. They do presentations like Ed Rosenthal presented that year alongside me. And, Jen and Jeremy Borgeson, they're beautiful members of the community. They do a lot for the community. They started this as as a friendly competition and an educational event to, educate New England and the Northeast about cannabis and what it did. So it's grown exponentially over the years, and it's now, like I said, the largest conference on the East Coast in regards to this. And we just had it in November, and it was a lot of fun. We had a great time, and it's
Did you speak this year too?
I did not speak this year, and I didn't have a booth this year. I was a judge this year, so it was nice to be able to go out and actually talk to people about their entries and, watch it get announced. So it was nice. It was the first year, like in 7 years, that I wasn't behind a booth all day, so
you just got to go enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I got to just really interact with people, and it's fun, because now, like you were saying, people recognize you in the space. They recognize your work. I really wanted to give people that time and opportunity. And like every 2 minutes, we would stop and I'd engage, in a long conversation with different vendors, different advocates, different patients that, we've seen and helped over the years. So it was a really beautiful, just lovely event to get the community together, and they do some beautiful music, entertainment, and stuff. We've had some awesome people come out and hang out with us over the years too at the events.
Have you seen that making any inroads into, like, I guess, traditional medicine field, that some doctors are saying now, hey, this might work? Not, instead of like alternative, healers or whatever it is, some regular doctors saying this might work.
Yes. So we are recognized now at a lot of the children's hospitals for the patients that we service in the pediatric realm. We have a neurologist over at Hasbro Children's Hospital in Providence that one of my pediatric patients is underseeing care from. He's such a big supporter of our products because he's seen this child, go through a number of different medications and not do well or as well as they have with ours. So it's starting to get recognized in the medical realm. We want to get the products into a triple blind study and get that backing for it so that we can put it into the system and have these products approved by insurance. That's a whole other demon to deal with. The insurance stuff is scary, as we've seen this week with everything going on in the news with that CEO's murder.
Yeah, it was awful. But okay, now I want to know, you mentioned like insurance, but also, is there pushback from like the pharmaceutical companies? Hey, we don't want this in the hospitals.
There's always pushback from pharma and some physicians. You actually learn pretty quickly who's in whose pocket, by response to stuff. A lot of traditional physicians, they're either A, not educated, or B, don't want to be educated for the research surrounding these compositions. And I think a lot of times too, some of their healthcare systems, they either A, advocate against it, or B, they want no part in it because it's not approved by the FDA.
Right.
So
what does it take to get that done? What does it take to get, possible acceptance by the FDA?
You got to sell your soul, basically. No, it's a long.
It's probably an accurate answer. Yes.
Yeah, it's a long, tedious process. The FDA is very skewed, as we know throughout the years with many cases. For a great example, I'm sure you've heard. Did you watch Dope Sick on Hulu about the opiates?
I've not seen that. I'm going to have to check it out.
I would highly recommend that. Michael Keaton's in that. He's a wonderful human being, and I really appreciate his acting. But yeah, just bringing awareness to that. The FDA approves a lot of things that are illegal in other countries that have been deemed as chemical compositions and toxic to the body. I'm dealing personally with the additives being placed in all injectable insulin on a global scale. So I'm fighting for that to be removed because I'm having issues with it.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of different things. Again, my biggest recommendation to everybody out there, check your additives in all your prescription medications.
Mhm.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I go where the evidence takes me. And when you have industrial chemicals that shouldn't be in any medication being put in stuff globally, there's no recourse for testing for toxicity, and there's no recourse to get them removed or compounded at a pharmacy because of legislation issues, then that seems very deliberate. And it's scary.
No, it is. It's a terrifying. Well, look, a lot of these medicine companies are terrifying when you look what can be done with them, and what's put into it, like you said, and also how much control that they have.
I also have a show, and I educate people.
I was going to ask about the show. We will definitely cover that.
So my next guest, Talia Smith, she is a healthcare advocate. She was a beautiful human being taking care of her husband who had been injured in combat. He's a combat veteran.
Mm-hmm.
She was a primary caregiver, and she got sick a few years back, had diagnosed with just a UTI, and they gave her a black box warning antibiotic. She took 3 pills from the fluoroquinolones, the Cipro, and is now completely disabled. She has,
oh my gosh,
24/7. Yeah. So again, a lot of medical trauma, not only in myself, but members of my community, seeing it firsthand. It's scary, and it does open your eyes to different things. And honestly, I have cut out so many things that are not from Mother Earth,
Right.
that have a lot of chemical toxicity to it.
It's funny because I know there are certain times that I'll go without certain things that I'm used to, like certain foods, and you feel better. And then when you take them again, like you don't get sick from eating a salad, though, but if you have like a fast food again after not having it for a long time, like, oh, I don't feel so good. So yes,
Exactly. I'll give you a good example on that. I have celiac disease, so I can't have wheat, gluten. My husband, chooses to eat that way, but on occasion, he'll have a regular piece of bread or a sub or something like that, and he just feels so sick after, and he doesn't even have any diagnosis. So, again, our bodies aren't meant to process a lot of those grains, but not only are the grains an issue, it's the composition and how they're producing them, the GMOs and stuff like that. They're doing a lot of weird things to our foods these days.
let me shift gears a little bit. So you were also in a film segment about women in cannabis. So I just wanted to tell me a little bit about that. And are there a lot of women involved in this business at all?
So it is a male dominant industry. So it's nice when, females can get together and support one another. It is starting to be more prevalent now. Like when I got into the industry back in 2016, women running or being executives in the space were few and far between. I see a lot of growth in that area, which is great. So, that's a beautiful thing. It was nice to contribute my story and my experience with plant-based medicine for that series. And again, it's like I said, the industry and just the world in general, it is a male-dominated world. We're getting better on the playing field, but statistically speaking, men still make more money than women, that kind of thing for the same job. So there's a lot of, research and statistics on, women in not only my industry, but just a variety of industries and how the differences are.
Oh, good for you for being, you having your own company with this. So, I watched your interview with Montel Williams. So cool. Now, so how did that come about? I mean, that you were interviewed by Montel.
Montel it was such an amazing opportunity to get involved with him. Somebody had sent me, my PR rep had sent me one of his podcasts, and I said, wow, I didn't realize he was doing podcasts. Yeah, so I was really excited. I have always been a fan of him, growing up, when I stayed home from
right. Yes.
school. We saw him on daytime TV and stuff, so it was always nice. I was a huge fan of him. And I learned more, about his stuff with MS and advocating for the space. Before it was cool to advocate for it. Um, so yeah, my PR rep sent me the stuff. She said, "Listen, I think you should personally reach out," and that's how I made the connection with Montel. And yeah, he's been a great advocate within the space, and his team is beautiful. It was a nice interview, so it was a
Yeah, no, it
great.
was a very, very good, very, very informative interview and very well done, I thought. So tell me about your company, Holistic Health Solutions.
So it's Holistic Hemp Solutions,
Hemp
and
Solutions, I'm sorry, yes.
okay,
Yes.
everybody does that. I was like, maybe I should have named it that, but because we get a lot of stigma, with having the word hemp in our name too. Even I follow a lot of Jewish advocacy groups. A lot of people they're weirded out by me following people on the business page and stuff, and I'm like, I'm a Jewish business owner, and not only am I a Jewish business owner, I still advocate. I do civil rights advocacy and stuff.
Mhm.
So after October 7th, I with the schools, and I got calls from different people for work related issues, different things like that. So there's a lot of anti-Semitism going around, so that was a big thing to contribute to. But Holistic Hemp Solutions is my company that I developed. We have the internationally patent pending products, two main products that I developed. I had gotten sick of trying so many topicals for my chronic pain disorder. I said, I've learned a lot about holistic health from my functional medicine physician that I've been working with. I can do this better. I can do this better. I'm going to try. So, it took me a while to, chemically and get everything correct from an alchemy standpoint from the products. And, my product has 5 different anti-inflammatory ingredients. Everything's completely organic. Even the preservative that we use is organic. So we're patent pending for the topical for pain, inflammation, skin conditions like psoriasis and eczema, and wound care. Nobody thinks about putting bacitracin or petroleum-based products on their wounds or post-operatively after surgery. A lot of people get infections and stuff, and they don't realize it's like you're literally putting gas on a wound when you use petroleum-based products, because there's still parts per million that remain in the product. So that's a few things that we're patent pending for. And then in regards to the tincture, we are patent pending for pain, inflammation, relaxation, symptomology, production, and prevention for COVID, and seizure conditions, just to name a few on those. And we're safe for pets and all populations. It's been safely tested, like I said, on the pediatrics from infancy and up until the geriatric populations, and into the hundreds. We've had people safely use these compositions.
Well, you mentioned October 7th. It's because of October 7th when I decided to do this. Basically, it's just want to amplify Jewish voices and in all walks of life. So yeah, that's definitely something that mattered to me.
Well, I thank you for doing that, because it's so needed right now. There's so much misinformation. I have family in Israel right now fighting in the war.
My daughter's in Israel right now.
Yeah, so it's scary. And again, as Jews, we need to band together and get the information out there. And during the Holocaust, there were Jews that supported the Nazi Party. And guess what happened to them, right? They were cattled off and put in the gas chambers with the rest of us. So it's a really scary thing, even educating other Jewish people that are not as well educated.
What you just said right now is one of my biggest things that irritates the hell out of me, is because you have the, like you've seen the as a Jews, condemning or siding with the Hamas protesters and saying, they still hate you too. You might come next afterwards, but they still hate you also. So it's just, careful who you're siding with.
It's very scary. It's very scary. There's a lot of money, time, energy that were invested into, essentially going into the school systems, having a board position. They infiltrated not only the schools, the media,
100%. Right.
It's a scary thing. This was very deliberate and very well planned for a long period of time.
You are 100% right in that. Yes. Well, let me get back to you. So, since I said I'm not familiar with the industry at all.
No,
So
it's
is there a legislative body, I guess, that oversees the industry to say that, hey, let's make sure this is all kosher. So is there someone?
yes, they're not greatly kosher themselves, but
Of
yes,
course.
yes. Again, with politics comes a lot of, craziness. I've testified for the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. I've tried to help with a number of different things. The industry in Massachusetts wasn't wanted. We had Charlie Baker at the time as a governor that actually, he was so vocal about not having it in there. The alcohol industry tried to, lobby against it. There was a whole bunch of, craziness surrounding the space. So essentially, they developed the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. They're the governing body for cannabinoid therapies in hemp and cannabis. So my products with my manufacturing partnership that I've developed, everything is legal. We can get everything into the dispensary systems. I've chosen actually not to work with a lot of the dispensaries. That's a whole other issue. There's a lot of predatory multi-state operators in our state. So a lot of small mom and pops, they'll start working with a big dispensary. They'll put in products. They won't get paid for them. So I don't want to chase down anybody, and I don't want to work with entities that screw over the little guy either. So it's nice owning your own business. You can choose who you want to work with.
Oh, that's true. That's exactly it. So, as an industry leader, what do you say to people who don't want cannabis or cannabis related products in their state or whatever? Or what do you say to someone to alleviate their fears?
I say, please do your research. I'm happy to educate you. Go to my website, check it out. I'm living, breathing proof that these compositions work. I went from only taking a few steps a day. I had so much difficulty after I got injured. I thought my life was over. I was 28 when I got injured. I was told that I'd never walk again properly, that I should go on SSDI and call it a day.
Oh my. Oh.
And I said that no, I refuse to let that be my life. I want to get better. I want to help other people. I was trained in traditional medicine because I wanted to help people. So it's been a joy and a privilege to turn something negative and traumatic into something really positive. I could have just taken SSDI and just sat at home and complained about my life, but I didn't want to live that way. I wanted to go back to, a functioning member of society.
Are you pain-free now?
I have my good days and my bad days, depending upon, what I'm doing. And usually it's a matter of my own stuff. I ate something crappy that was inflammatory and
right.
My immune system and my immune response for inflammation. Right now, I'm actually, like I said, I'm dealing with some of the repercussions of insulin. I never had issues taking insulin until I was on an insulin pump and filtering these chemicals through my body 24/7, had a response to them. So now I'm dealing with the repercussions of that. So, there's always something, but like I said, every day I'm grateful because I'm alive. I'm here. It's another day to help somebody else, to educate, to do something positive in the world. And that's what I'm grateful for. And I try to focus on that.
You seem like a very positive person. So that helps. That attitude helps a lot.
Thank you. Again, you can look at the glass as half full or half empty at that point, and I choose.
That's very true.
There's always someone that has it worse. So, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everything.
Well, so what do you see as the future of the industry? I mean, what do you see that possibly might develop from it, as well as the future for you and your company?
So as a industry whole, I hope to see it more mainstream. I hope to see it less demonized and more supported by traditional physicians. Like I said, we're definitely gaining headway. There's a lot of patients that work with their doctors and our products and have seen positive reviews. We've had people reach out and, want to get involved in different things. So, it's coming. It's coming along, but again, it's really hard when you have these billion-dollar plus or trillion-dollar entities and big pharmaceutical companies making a profit off of the sick, making a profit off of creating new illnesses with their medications. Uh, it's a hard thing. So I do see the industry going more mainstream. I see full legalization coming online within the near future. I think these
You think across the board, across the country, full legalization?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a human rights issue. Again, our ancestors have been consuming, applying, eating, smoking these compositions for thousands of years. And all of a sudden, when someone got greedy, they just took that access away. Something doesn't feel right on that. And it does. It makes you question. It's like, all right, well, now my immune system's not functioning correctly because my endocannabinoid system's not optimal. So, is this disease that I've developed as a result of, not having exposure to these natural plant-based medicines that my ancestors had access to?
So you think we're going to reach a time that this can be used to treat more serious, ailments as well?
I do. I think that's where we're headed. I think people are fed up with the system. We talk about what just happened this week in the news with the CEO getting gunned down. There has to be major change in the healthcare system. When the healthcare industry became for profit in the 80s, everything has kind of just gone downhill. People aren't seen as people anymore. They're seen as a number and a dollar sign.
My father was a part. Nothing is ever to a point that you go shoot someone down. And I've heard I have a friend who worked with that person, and that he was one of the ones trying to make change, and that they set back things. Just an ugly incident. So how can people find out more about you, your company, your products, and how can they follow you on social media?
You can look us up on Holistic Hemp Solutions on Instagram and Facebook. Our website is the easiest way to get in contact with me. You can reach me at www.H solutions with an S at the end, .co, not com. So hsolutions.co is our website. And, we're here to help. We're here to answer questions. Like I said, we do a plethora of stuff through the agency. I was a healthcare advocate for many years. I'm a civil rights advocate. I help, during Black Lives Matter, we supported a lot of the African-American community, our brothers and sisters in that. And, when everything happened in October, having a voice and supporting our race. This has nothing to do with religion, right? A lot of people are like, I don't want to deal with a religious war. I'm like, well, you do realize that that's my race, that I'm Jewish as a race. So, educating people on that and just having a voice for the victims is big for me, and we've gotten a lot of backlash from a business perspective for having a voice on the right side of history.
Yeah, look, you're targeted just because of one issue, and just plainly, anti-Semitism instead of just, any reason for a company, a legitimate reason. So exactly. Can people follow you on social media yourself, or is there a thing that you want someone to follow you?
No, they can. If they love to. I'm very active on our Holistic Hemp Solutions and our Facebook and Instagram. We do have somebody, I have a social media manager that helps, but I'm still on there. I'm looking at every message, every contact on there. So that's the easiest way to get in touch with me. I do have a private Facebook page, but I should, my PR rep keeps getting on me. I need to get my LinkedIn updated. I had one after I graduated college in 2008, but I just never did anything with it. So that's the easiest way to get in touch with me. People can follow me on there.
Well, Julia, I want to thank you again for coming on. It's been a pleasure getting to speak to you and learn. Definitely a learning thing today for me. So learn all about this industry and the products.
No, it's not scary. These are natural compositions that work with the human body as they're supposed to. We don't have a Tylenol system, right? we do have an endocannabinoid system, which is meant to process cannabinoids. So it's a really crucial thing. Knowledge is power, and there's nothing to be scared of. If you want to be scared, read the back of your prescription, your inserts. They're putting industrial chemicals in a lot of our medications, our foods, our cosmetics, stuff that we use on a daily basis. So if you really want to be scared, go check out your traditional stuff that you're using.
I agree. Well, thank you again. Well,
No, thank you for all the work that you do. It's important work. I commend you for it. And Yisrael Chai to our community.
I appreciate that. Well,
thank you so much.
This has been The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen. Again, a very special thanks to Ann Mejia. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.